The maid wiped the marble floor of the mansion where her own son lived, calling someone else Mom. For 18 years, she'd watched him grow, smile, graduate, never once hearing him call her mother. Tonight, as the family celebrated his 18th birthday, a single letter hidden in her hand could destroy everything. She'd kept the secret to protect him, but the truth was no longer hers to bury, because the boy she raised as a servant son was her blood. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. Evelyn Grace was 23 when she first entered the Whitmore mansion, as a maid, not a mother. The marble floors, the silence, the portraits staring down at her. This wasn't her world. But the Whitmores had just lost their newborn son in a hospital fire. Everyone grieved. Everyone except Evelyn, who knew something no one else did. Her baby had survived. Theirs hadn't. The hospital had made an unthinkable mistake, swapping the infants during the chaos. By the time she realized, the Whitmores had already claimed her baby as their own. When she tried to speak, they fired her. The next day, she found herself holding the dead child and the billionaire's son too in her arms. Years later, the Whitmores hired her back, not recognizing her behind the tired eyes of poverty. And from that day, Evelyn raised Daniel, her son, as the family's maid. She made his breakfast, ironed his uniforms, cleaned his shoes, and whispered silent prayers over him every night. He was kind, smart, pure-hearted. And every time he smiled, she saw the same dimple as his father, a man who'd left her before Daniel was even born. Now Daniel was 18. Reporters gathered for his grand birthday gala. Evelyn stood in the corner holding a silver tray and a single sealed letter, a dying nurse's confession proving the truth. She could finally tell him, but doing so would shatter his world. Evelyn sat in her small servant's room that night, the mansion alive with laughter above her. She placed the letter on her lap, tracing the handwriting. To the woman who lost everything that night. Her heart trembled. It was from Nurse Alice, the woman who'd switched the babies 18 years ago. She had written it on her deathbed. "You were right. Your son lives. I'm sorry I was too afraid to speak. I pray someday you'll forgive me." Evelyn wept quietly, clutching the paper to her chest. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, telling Daniel the truth, hugging him, hearing him say Mom. But then she saw his smile in her memory, the way he called Mrs. Whitmore Mom, and her courage faded. The Whitmores weren't cruel. They had raised Daniel with love. He'd grown into a good man because of them. What right did she have to take that from him? Still, every lie has an expiration date. That evening, Daniel came down to the kitchen. "Miss Eve," he said softly, "you've worked for us forever. Will you be there tomorrow? My graduation?" Her eyes filled. "Of course, dear." He smiled and walked away humming. When he was gone, she looked again at the letter. She knew she couldn't hide it anymore. Truth doesn't stay buried, not when a mother's love is the shovel. The next morning, Evelyn woke to chaos. Sirens outside, Mrs. Whitmore in tears. Daniel's car had crashed on the coastal road. He was alive, but in a coma. The letter slipped from her hand. She ran barefoot to the hospital. Inside the ICU, doctors swarmed around him. Tubes, machines, beeping monitors. He looked so small beneath all that wealth. Evelyn pressed her trembling fingers to the glass, whispering, "Hold on, my boy." Mrs. Whitmore sobbed beside her. "He's my world, Eve. If anything happens to him," Evelyn wanted to scream, "He's mine too." But she couldn't, not yet. Days turned into weeks. Daniel remained unresponsive. One afternoon, as Mrs. Whitmore slept in the waiting chair, Evelyn reached into her pocket and unfolded the letter. She laid it gently on the bedside table. "Someday," she whispered, "you'll know why I stayed close. But fate has its own timing." That night, a storm hit. The hospital lights flickered. Daniel's hand twitched, and just once, Evelyn froze. Slowly, his eyes opened, dazed, confused. "Miss Eve," he murmured weakly. She rushed forward, crying. "I'm here, sweetheart." "You're safe," he smiled faintly. "You were crying?" "In my dream. Why?" She brushed his hair, whispering, "Because a mother always does." He didn't understand yet. But destiny had just opened the door she'd kept locked for 18 years. When Daniel recovered, the first thing he noticed was the letter on his bedside. He read it slowly, confusion spreading across his face. By the time Evelyn walked in, he was trembling. Miss Eve, this can't be true. Tears welled up in her eyes. It is. Mrs. Whitmore entered right then, eyes darting between them. What's going on? Daniel turned the letter toward her. Is this real, Mom? Silence. Mrs. Whitmore's face paled. Then she whispered, Your father knew. Evelyn froze. What did you say? Mrs. Whitmore broke down. He knew Eve all these years. He found out after the fire, but he couldn't bear losing Daniel again, or the company's image. He paid the hospital to stay silent. I begged him to tell you, but he refused. Evelyn staggered back, heart shattered. So the man who'd fired her, ruined her life, knew the truth all along. Daniel looked between them, disbelief in his eyes. You both lied to me? Evelyn cried. I stayed to protect you. Mrs. Whitmore sobbed. And I stayed to keep you. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hospital monitor beeped steadily, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. Then Daniel said quietly, I don't know who my mother is anymore. Both women broke down. 2 weeks later, Daniel called both women to the mansion. The media was outside, rumors already spreading about the Whitmore scandal. He stood in front of them, holding the letter. All my life, I lived in a house full of love built on a lie. And I can't keep pretending. Evelyn trembled. Daniel, you don't owe me anything. He turned to her. You gave me everything. Mrs. Whitmore tried to speak, but her voice broke. I was scared to lose you. He sighed deeply. You both loved me differently. One gave me blood, the other gave me life. But love isn't ownership. It's truth. He called the press inside. Cameras flashed. Evelyn panicked. Daniel, please. He smiled softly. It's time the world knows the truth. Not for revenge, but for peace. Then he faced the cameras. I am Daniel Grace Whitmore, son of 2 mothers. One who gave me birth and one who gave me shelter. I owe both my heart. The room went silent. Tears streamed down both women's faces. For the first time, Evelyn didn't hide. She stood tall, not as a maid, but as a mother. The story exploded across the media. Headlines read, Maid's secret child, billionaire family exposed. The Whitmore family reputation crashed overnight. But Daniel didn't care. He had something more important. Freedom. Evelyn was fired, of course. The board demanded it. But Daniel stepped in. If she goes, I go. The company had no choice. For the first time, Evelyn walked through those mansion doors as an equal, not a servant. She didn't want wealth, just her name back. Daniel hugged her in front of everyone. From now on, he said, you're not Miss Eve. You're my mother. Mrs. Whitmore stood aside, crying. Then she walked up and whispered, he's your son, but he'll always be our miracle. Evelyn nodded. And you'll always be the woman who loved him when I couldn't. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was healing. Months passed. The world moved on, but inside the Whitmore mansion, everything had changed. Daniel inherited the company after his father's death. He offered Evelyn the position of family advisor. She refused politely. I've cleaned enough floors. Now I'll clean souls, and by helping women who lost children like I did. She opened a small foundation called Grace's House, helping single mothers start new lives. Daniel funded it anonymously. One evening, he visited her new shelter. Children ran around her, calling her Mom. He smiled. Looks like you finally got your family. She laughed softly. No, Daniel. I just found the courage to love again. As he left, he turned back once more. Thank you, he said, for never leaving me, even when I didn't know who you were. Evelyn's eyes glistened. That's what mothers do, son. On the next Mother's Day, Daniel hosted a small event at Grace's house. Cameras were banned. This wasn't about fame. He handed Evelyn a small wrapped box. Inside was a necklace, a tiny silver heart engraved with 3 words, my real home. She smiled through tears. You didn't have to, he interrupted gently. You spent 18 years being silent. Today, let me be the one who speaks, he called Mrs. Whitmore forward. The 3 of them stood together, awkward at first, then emotional. Daniel looked at both women and said, I don't have 2 mothers. I have one heart big enough to hold you both. They hugged, quietly, tearfully, beautifully. For the first time, Evelyn wasn't a maid, wasn't a secret. She was seen. The truth had broken everything, but rebuilt something stronger. Love without labels. Moral: Sometimes life hides the truth not to punish us, but to test how long love can stay silent. Evelyn's silence wasn't weakness, and it was sacrifice. In the end, truth didn't destroy her family. It freed them. Because real mothers aren't chosen by birth, they're chosen by love.